Well, hello. This is the first time I've ever gone live. Bear with me, I am taping on my potato phone, and this could be a little tricky. But I wanted to give guys a quick update on some of the really cool things going on in my little studio here. I have a planted tank I call the Deku tank we're looking at right now. It has four females, one male, full adults, and over 40 babies from like pretty much born yesterday to I would say young adults. You can see some of the young adults. They're the kind of chubby ones. They're about half the size of the adults. That one's one of my favorites. That's a Dalmatian Red. And then I have two Blue Mountain Steel Platies. I'm not really sure what type of line that one is, but that's the male. He, I call a Tangerine Platy. Now, when I originally got him, he was very, very light. Almost as light as that one right there. And now, with my colorations and with the natural light from the window and my utilization on the different triggers for better color vibrancy and things like that, I got him to go almost dark. Right now I'm trying to use a flashlight to give you guys a little bit better view in some of these spots. So bear with me again. This is a potato phone, and these are my platyfish. This is one of my favorite views. I really like looking at tanks from the side. You can get a better feel of the depth and what's going on in there. These are, oh geez, probably way overstocked by most people's views, but honestly, the tank is actually very well balanced. It's kind of hard to keep the plants growing very well because the snails and the platyfish just eat everything, honestly. They don't actually hurt the plants really, and honestly, or rather, what type of fish other than goldfish can destroy duckweed, really? And everything else is more or less just an additional fertilizer type issue. I do use fertilizers, but it's actually a little hard to keep up with the demand of the growing in this tank. Everything in this tank is actually very healthy. I do water changes at needed, not so much as like let's say daily 50% or something like that. It's more like when I get certain parameters going in the wrong direction, or I can tell just by really looking at the water flow. Usually when the water is getting a little bit rough, you'll actually see it kind of get a little frothy. Generally, all the tanks are actually very well balanced considering their sizes or stocking. I make sure there's no ammonia in the water, no with the fish. I do quarantinative methods. Now, you're probably wondering, what are we looking at here? This is really supposed to be my hospital tank. Now, about 2 weeks ago, my big blue mountain platy there had some sort of cut on its head, and she, was just getting irritated by it. It was looking infected, so I took her out of the system here. I had put her in here for about a week, and by the end of that week, there was something like over 20 baby fish in there. Now, I did take out three. Two accidentally got sucked up with one of the water changes, unfortunately, and about two were inside the filter. So I had to take those guys out. Now, it's really hard to see, but there are actually about a dozen little baby fish in here, and they're all doing really well. Their little bellies are full. Bear with me, I am sorry about all the movement, but just want to get you guys all the angles you can see, really. And, well, I guess that's about all I can get for that one. Now, over here is my retired blue crown-tail betta. He's a male, and let's see if he'll come up to play. Hey, come on, buddy. I've got him conditioned to come to the top when I give a very light tap to the top, and usually he'll come right over, want some food. I did feed them just about an hour ago. Everybody in the room, including the other rooms. I do have turtles. I do keep propagation stations. We'll get around to those things. Now, this guy here, I call him Blue. I mean, yeah, how original, right? Anyway, Blue is probably about 4 years old, and well, he is kind of getting a little old. He's slowing down, and I'm just making sure he's as happy as I can make him, considering, you know, his advanced age. It's kind of funny how that works out. I tried to breed Blue with a red crown tail. I'd gotten them both probably about 3 years ago, and well, you know how the story goes. Anyway, the crown tail female ended up passing away about a month or two ago. It was not too recent, but just enough to really still kind of bum me out, really. I had them wrap once. There was eggs, but I don't think Blue was actually ready to take care of them. Anyway, you're probably wondering, why am I still talking about bettas and we're looking at fancy fish now? These are my 3 fancy goldfish. Have 2 fantails and 1 telescope eye more, bubble eye more. Anyway, I've had these for about, geez, I would say a year and a half. I'm gonna have to look at my videos, actually, figure that out. But I've had them for a little while. Well, quite a while. Not a little while, like a couple months, but about a year and a half, I'd say. And maybe a little longer, actually, closer to 2 years. Anyway, this one right here is Gem. She used to be the size of Garfield. I know some of these names aren't really that original, but Garfield is awesome. He was what I thought was a runt. They were about the same size, but maybe he is a runt. Anyway, I had gotten Gem about 6 months before I'd gotten these ones, but for the most part, they were all around the same size. Gem's size has exploded, and she used to be more or less more of a white and yellowy and black sort of speckle pattern. What really caught my eye was the coloration in her tail, and I was like, oh man, this one's really fun looking. So snapped her up, and she's been doing quite well with me. I've been able to get her so much more coloration, much better conditioning in her body. I don't know if it's showing up very well on the screen here, but she is, I think it's called Nicaric Calico. She has the sort of no scale sort of body with metallic random scales here and there. Maybe, that's not really working. Kinda. You can kinda see it. maybe I'm just illusioning myself. Anyway, she has metallic random scales along with about 4 colors. There's white, there's black, there's red, there's orange. Well, maybe 5 colors. Besides the red and the orange, there is a little bit of like a yellow going on, but that's Gem. And this one right here, I call her Wednesday. And post a comment if you know what that's from. For the most part, most of my names, I usually like to consider the personality or behavior of the animal, and then I kind of like figure out what sort of famous or fun name from like a movie or something like that to give them their moniker. So post a comment if you know who Wednesday is, and maybe you're right. This one right here I call my temple tank, and in the temple tank we have lots of plants. Tetras, I want to say cardinal? No, neon tetras. I always get those two mixed up, but one has a red stripe that basically goes all the way up to their mouth, and then the other one is more or less split like this. And I'm pretty sure it's the neon tetras that are considered, these are considered, and they're doing really well. I wish this tank wasn't so stuck on overdrive, so to say. These little fishies are only about a year old, and they've been breeding. That is, the platies have been breeding successfully, and the tetras, now I'm very sure they're breeding as well, but they're egg scatterers. They lay eggs, and for the most part, I believe everything in the tank eats it, including themselves. And the platies, I would imagine there would have been much more little babies in here. Maybe it has something to do with their size. I really think it's more or less to do with predation, unfortunately, because, well, look how fat that little female is. She's got to have tons of eggs in her, or had eaten a bunch of babies. I imagine she has a bunch of eggs, sorry, not actually eggs, but live young. Platies are live bearers, so they give birth, and I've never actually captured it on film, which would be something pretty neat to show everybody, especially their little dances as well. Sorry about the movement. Again, this is a potato, and it just takes me a little while to line up some of the shots, but this is, again, one of my favorite sort of views of a tank from the side. And you know, I always consider three-dimensional placement. Now I'm pretty sure you might have noticed a couple of things within each tank that are similar or consistent. For the most part, I believe a pre-filter is very important. It's probably the worst view to look at it. Pre-filters are very important. Not only do they help... Oh geez, I really shouldn't mess with the zoom. Not only do pre-filter help with you know, maintenance of the filter itself, it'll keep it cleaner longer. So long as you maintain the pre-filter properly, don't let it get clogged, don't clean it with like any cleaners, anything like that. Basically, about once a week, or whenever you notice the flow really start to cut out, take the filter, pre-sponge, just wring it out in a bucket of water, hopefully some conditioned water or just your old tank water in between a small water change. Now anytime I see the filters just getting a little clogged, I just do a small water change, like maybe a 10%, just enough to fill a bucket really, a couple of times maybe, depending on how I feel that day and what the tests from the parameters are talking about, and whether or not things are actually really needing the excess care. Rule of thumb here for most people, especially if you're new, that you should follow try your best to stay consistent, but at the same time, now this really works better for like a saltwater tank, but I believe it's the same with freshwater as well, but on a different level for a reason. But my point is, stay consistent and consider what you're going to keep. But at the same time, I'm losing my train of thought here. So consistency, yeah. What I'm lacking very much in this live post of mine is consistency. But I'm talking about consistency in tanks, so that's a little bit different. Anyway, what I'm trying to get to, my point, which I hope I didn't destroy by now, is try and keep your hands out of the tank as much as possible. The more you mess around, moving things around, just getting your hands in there, you don't really know if your hands have any contaminants on there, like chemicals. You wouldn't believe the stuff that basically just kind of builds up. And now you might say, oh, well, I wash my hands all the time. Also depends on the type of soaps you might use. So again, I would just more or less say consistency and minimal touching of the system after you've initially set it up. Basically, you wanna set it up and not forget it, but you wanna make it so that way it doesn't actually how do I put it, cause any issues. I've noticed, especially with the saltwater tank, which we'll get to in a little bit, the less I mess around in that tank, the better things look, and the more less stress there is in that system, I would say. Now, right now, I'm trying to show you guys my little propagation station, but it's not working very well. If I stay a little bit further back, maybe you'd be able to see it a little bit better. More or less, I am growing a couple of different things. I really do like succulents, cacti, just odd-looking plants, really, just my favorite stuff. I am propagating pothos for sale and for tank maintenance. I'm probably going to post a video next week on how to use it, or just how I'm using it. I mean, there's plenty of videos out there, some great aquarists out there. I'm sure you're probably familiar. Joey DIY, Rachel O'Leary, those, and many more, like Serpa Design. He's not exactly all tanks, but really great channel for the whole mixed tanks with plants and animals. Great stuff. Does a lot of terrariums and vivariums. There's so many great fish keepers and YouTubers out there on the what I would call tank hobby. Anything that goes in a bowl or terrarium or a flower pot with a little bit of more consideration than just your average flower pot you put outside. Like maybe it's something like this bucket here. This bucket is more or less one of my cultures for snails and micro crustaceans. I don't have a good camera to be taking photos of anything in there, but for the most part, it is filled with pond snails and, you know what, this might work. Yeah. Pond snails and what the heck is it called? They look like teeny tiny little nits or gnats. I think they're called Daphnia. I could be wrong. I know I have seed shrimps and what looks like little fairy shrimps or brine shrimps, but I know they're not brine shrimps. More or less a tadpole with antennas. And then there's some other ones that I wouldn't even really be able to explain exactly what they look like, but they're even tinier. Um, as you can see in here, there are tons of snails. Those are easy to see. Their eggs, well, good luck. Probably not going to see those. Um, so since I figured out that I can shoot with the 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 flash on, now I can probably show you um, my one station here that we're looking at. Um, this is a fuzzy jade. That I'm pretty sure is a pencil plant, pencil cactus. And then I'm not sure exactly what type of grass this is, but I did get it in a seed mix packet. Every now and then I do like to buy mixed bags of seeds from, reputable systems. Dune, Buzzy, those are two that are probably my favorites. But there are aquaculture type that deal with just water plants, and be careful on how you look for those things. Some of the things on Amazon are going to be, let's say, not fully informative. You might think you're getting one thing and you might end up with something else, or they might say, oh, 10,000 seeds, and it ends up being more like maybe 100. So, consider where you're going to get your stuff from. I would always check local sellers first, if you have any local sellers. You never know what you'll find in the nurseries and the gardens around the area. Now in Jersey, there's, as it is the garden state, lots of different places to go for either plants, seeds, or let's say harvesting hikes. You just got to check in with the stuff that you're looking at. You don't want to take anything endangered. And by all means, I would say only trimmings or plants that be propagated. Really shouldn't be taking entire plants out of their natural systems, because they're there naturally. They need to be there. The other day, walking home from work, I had found some toads that were pretty much on the hot end. Didn't feel that that was a safe spot for them, so I did go out of my way. I would call it like a park. It's not really a park, but it's a really nice location. And right now, oh geez, I am really messing up this camera. Sorry guys, don't want to mess anybody's eyes up or anything. Anyway, let's see if I can get rid of that. Nope, that didn't work. Oh, it's coming from my phone. Hold on, let's get rid of the flash. There we go. So right now we're looking at my 80-gallon tank. It is a mixed tropical tank, and some might say, how is it tropical with goldfish in there? Well, that's the thing about tropical. With proper conditioning, everybody can have their happy medium. I usually run this tank anywhere between 76 and 78 and up. If it gets really hot, like it has been a couple of times last week, and just about a couple of weeks throughout the summer or summers, you will have some issues with heat if you're not in a very well insulated and temperature controlled building. Now, I would recommend, if you're going to end up with multiple tank syndrome, like most aquaculture people end up with, you really want some lids on things, even if you have to make them. It is best for humidity, things like that. Now, this is my lid. It is literally just a couple of sheets of plexiglass, cut to size, and for the most part, they're just little panels that I have to clean today. Usually they're not this clouded, but Anyway, it's not a big deal so long as what you're doing is more or less keeping the excess evaporation down. Now, the cool thing is, in uh, in days when it gets a little bit hotter, you remove part of the lid or some or all of the lids, and you know, it will help with evaporation. Now I'm gonna try. That's my pleco there. He or she, I'm not really sure, is getting big real quick, and I'm very happy about that. Over here we have Goliath. Obviously it's a big guy. Some of my goldfish in here are about the size of fingerlings, but I wouldn't really call them fingerlings. I usually do a lot of conditioning and hybrid vigor type triggers. Goliath is about somewhere between 9 and 10 years old, maybe 12. I've had him for about 10 years, and you know, he was smaller than the fish, the smallest fish in here. Well, you get the idea. He was a baby when I got him, and now he's a big Goliath. Over here, that's Tiger, one of my favorite new additions to the Comet family. Now over there is a couple of dinosaur fish. I love watching them do their thing, hunt, whatever. They're just fun to watch. Oh, I don't know what I did there, but it looks like everything went dark. Hopefully it didn't go dark on you guys. Now, they're fun to watch, and again, with a little bit of color conditioning, I've been trying to force them to turn black. I've gotten them pretty dark, which is really cool. Usually they're kind of like a pale gray or a lighter color than that. They are Bashir Singalis. They are the dinosaur fish so nice they named it twice. Comes from the Singalis region in Africa, I believe. Anyway, they are a really fun fish to watch when they're mobile. A lot of the times, if I feed a whole bunch that day, they just kind of go in the corner for a day and just hang out until they lounge around, which is really fun to see on the leaves or on the top of the ruins there. The theme in this tank, if you haven't figured it out by now, is ruins. Everything in here is not exactly tied down, so gives the fish the ability to kind of move the plants around. The only thing that really stays in place is the wall there. Other than that, we do have one of my favorite paintings. That is the Starry Night by Vincent van Gogh. It is not an actual painting. It is a big reprint poster that my brother got for me years ago, and thought it was an amazing little background. You know, it's not even really supposed to be a background, but the thing about creativity, you just gotta think about what you want to do and set it up the way you like. Yeah, I'm a bit of a cartoon freak. That is a Ninja Turtles edition, limited edition movie comic, Secret of the O's 2. For the most part, to put it simply, I'm very passionate about art and science, and that's all I do. Let's look at my favorite view in this tank. Okay, hopefully you're not hearing all the noise. I am basically above the air pump and some of the other mechanical pieces. Basically the whole system's on this side. And then I've got tubing that runs to the other side to give us the air bubbles. This is set up more like a river flow, if that makes any sense. I do have these two aqua clears here. I'm not really sure what size they are. I've had them for, well, probably over 15 years now. Somewhere between 10 and 15 years. So they're actually the original versions, when they numbered them a little bit differently. I think now they go by like smaller rates, like an Aqua Clear 70, or is actually now, no, Aqua Clear is now partially fluval, I think. So you might see some mixed stuff there, but for the most part, I would say the Aqua Clear filters are amazing. Very customizable, as you can see. Basically, the only thing is you don't want to overdo it. Whenever you're hot rodding or customizing your filters, make sure you have ample flow at all times. The flow going through the filter is really the main purpose of your over the side filters, hop filters, whatever. So what we're looking at is one of them. I do have two different sizes, and again, it's part of the river flow setup I've created. Oh, geez. Just real quick, that is a power head. And again, as you see, the consistent theme here is pre-filters and hang on the back filters, and thought into the water flow, how much actual rate of flow is going through the tank. Excuse me. So, the flow is very important. This tank is set up with like a river flow based on the positioning and sizing of the pumps and whatnot. I'm going to turn this part off again. Bear with me, folks. So for the most part, a lot of the flow is right here up against the glass and across the top, and just flows in that direction. Straight across. The different heights, let's say it, as within the water column for where the pumps are pulling from or directing from, really helps direct the flow and just make sure that the circulation is ample. It's a good way to make sure everything's good by having maybe a couple of pumps, if you can do it that way. Part of every tank should have some form of circulation. Even fancy fish tanks, the really big, what are those called? Bubble eye goldfish. They really don't like lots of flow. Can't really handle it, honestly, but still do need circulation. Fish in fish bowls, that does not work. The reason why a pond works is because of the size versus surface area. The volume of the water versus the surface area on top of the water. A lot of issues come about from surface tension or surface retention. You need a proper gas exchange, and the best way to, or easiest way to do that is either with some sort of bubble filter or a small pump. You can get away with, small air stone, things like that, but you always want to consider the flow of these things. We are gonna go over here now, and this is my other station for propagation, my Propagation Station. I'm gonna turn down some of these purple lights. I don't know about you, but it just looks crazy on the film here. There we go. We have several bubble bowls here, and I know I was just talking about bubble bowls, but I'm not using them for fish, I promise. These are actually just some there's an acronym for it, but for the most part, these are my spare tanks in case something happens to the other systems. They are, you know, monitored and maintained, and basically they run themselves. I just make sure to feed the snails once in a while. The plants usually do pretty well, so there's not a lot of breaking down going on from the plants. So for the most part, you really want to consider a balanced system in whatever you're going to do. I believe this one here is called Savinia. It's a floating plant. Pretty neat looking too. It's like floating leaves. And don't mind all the wall spots. For the most part, that's pretty much hard water. I have extremely hard water, and I make it even harder. Mineral content is quite important, I think, and if you can condition the fish to your water system, that's the best way to do it. Consistency with what you can provide is more important than chasing the parameters. Now again, I got to turn off the flash. Here we go. Now this tank I did a little update on a couple of days ago. This is my saltwater tank. It is a 10-gallon saltwater reef. There are several corals in here, green Naphthia, green polyzoas, green star polyps, green meteor cephastria, a red hand leather coral, a orange or red zoa, and some Hollywood stunner. That's that one. Focus. Here we go. You can see there a couple critters. That's a hermit crab and a scooter blenny just chilling out. They love to be little hams, and that's my clownfish, Maud the clownfish, and Bernice the scooter blenny. They're a fun pair. They get along very well, eat ravenously, and are constantly looking for food, so it's fun to feed them. Just try not to overfeed them. Honestly, it's a hard battle because they're just so interactive. And the green star polyp there is doing really well. I fragged it about a week ago, or a little more than a week ago now. It was really taken off. It used to be one giant, well, let's cut back again. There used to be two piles here. This one here I glued onto the rock, and then the plug here was just completely covered. Now obviously I took a lot off the plug, and basically I had stripped the plug. There was just a little bit left and right, and as you can see, it's really pretty much grown across the surface again. So the intention is to really fill in this cup stone. It's not actually a stone, it is a chalice coral. Well, a long past chalice coral. I had gotten it in my pack of live rock. Well, just rock, honestly. It was live rock at one point, came from a friend of mine's system. Dried out some of the pieces on a table for, well, quite a while. The sun is amazing at sterilizing, so if you can, it's the best way to really clean off your rocks, if you have the patience and whatnot. Just give them a good scrub, a good rinse, then leave them out in a nice, warm, hot, sun-baked area to basically bake in the sun for at least a couple of days. The longer the better. Eventually they'll get seeded with the ions and trace elements within the air or within the rain. If it rains, it's kind of good, honestly, I think. More or less, so long as there's nothing icky or weird growing on it, let's say, you know, it should be completely fine. I had mine on a glass table, and they just sat there in the sun. A couple of rainstorms, and after that, put the new rocks in here. Now this tank's been running for a few years now. It's doing really well. Just can't stop not looking at it. I love all my tanks, but I feel with the way this one's going, I'm just thoroughly pleased with how everything's taken off, doing well. Again, consistency is most important. Now, obviously, a saltwater tank is a little bit more different or trickier than a freshwater system. A lot of people say the bigger the better. I would tend to agree. There's not so much hard swings in temperature, salinity, well, basically parameters across the board. The bigger the volume, the slower it'll take for the system to swing into issues. With that said, it could also be a little bit more difficult to manage a large system. You gotta do the work. It doesn't matter if it's, you know, a 5-gallon all the way to 2,000 gallon. It doesn't matter. You just gotta make sure to do the work. Consistency in the parameters is most important. Consider what you want to keep. Consider what your water matrix, what your source water, whatever you want to call your source of water. That is very important, because whether it's tap water, whether it's RODI water, you got to know what you're using, how to use it, in the sense of, is my water well water? Well, my water is not well water. Try and say that a bunch of times, right? If you do, you might not have to deal with chlorines and chloramines and things like that, but you might actually have to deal with things like arsenic, mineral leaching, not enough minerals in the water. I mean, there are so many different variables, and the weirdest thing about any of these things is whether or not you're on the same system. Let's say it's city water, municipal tap water from the pipes, and everybody on your block has a fish tank. Well, each house is going to be built at different times with different materials. They're going to be on a different location on the pipeline itself. Now, it's not like, you know, the Alaskan pipeline, but the thing is, pipes are changed, pipes are not changed, pipes are just so many different types out there, and each different type of house. One house, literally, to your next door neighbor could be wildly different. And even though you're literally in the same location as far as where the source water is coming in, your pipes might be contributing to it in one way or another. I have a lot of old iron pipes and plastic pipes. My TDS is very high to begin with, but I do enrich it. But that's only after I've done a lot of things to the water. I usually take the water, set it in a reservoir, just basically a bunch of jugs or a large water container. I do want to sort of upgrade that. I have an idea where if I can pretty much source it into the attic on like a rack bed or something like that, I can have it gravity fed back into the tanks as like an auto top off and a auto water change, or semi-auto. You know, there's going to be a lot of ball valves, junctions that you would have to turn on and off, more or less. But more or less the idea is it would give it a bigger volume for me to cut down on some of the work that I do. Every day I mix and create water, and it's in a sort of staging situation. When it gets into my jugs here, they're only gallon jugs, but each gallon jug is been basically filled with water that has been sitting for a day or two, been circulated, been stirred, and then after that, I condition the water with Prime and Acuro water conditioners, along with vitamins and mineral additives, and then that sits for another day or so. And then it's ready to go for all the freshwater systems, but not quite for this system here, my saltwater tank. The water from that point, after it's been sitting with the additives for a couple of days and the mineral chemistry and whatnot that I check into, make sure the TDS is within the same range of what I've been using more or less. So I've never really had an issue where it would be very low, but I always like to keep an eye on that, especially since I like to add a lot of stuff to the water. The TDS is generally high, lots of calcium, lots of trace elements are ready to begin with, but I still have to make some for the saltwater tank. So at that point, I use the saltwater reef crystals, mix it up real well, let it sit, stir it up, keep an eye on the salinity, and then once the water looks absolutely clear in the reservoirs, I give it a real good stir again, just to make sure, and then more or less it's been sitting for about a day or two from there. And again, I don't necessarily do tons of water changes. Some people swear, water change every day, 100%, 50%, 20%. You'll hear different things from different people. Some systems don't do water changes and they're perfectly fine. But the thing is consistency, and I've probably said that consistently through this entire video, but consistency is key, and most importantly, knowing what you're wanting to contain. These are really little ecosystems that we are in control of, and if we are not in control or aware of how these are running more or less, they'll get unbalanced very quickly. So for the most part, I generally test or check the parameters in the systems quite often, a couple of times through the week, a little bit more on the saltwater tank because I still consider myself fairly new to this. I've only been doing it for a couple of years, and for the first year and a half, 2 years, it was more of a microculture farm. I had tons of snails, tons of hermit crabs, tons of microcultures of amphipods, copepods, a lot of stuff that you just really can't see in this system because they're so darn tiny. But I assure you, there are spaghetti worms, filter fan worms, the micro teeny ones, tiny bristle stars, Asterina stars, small anemones. Usually there's teeny little critters in the sand that you can see across the glass, but I really need a better camera to be showing you some of this stuff. Bear with me, folks. Hopefully you enjoy what you're seeing and this crazy video and rambling nature of my vlog. I am trying to get better. I would say I am getting better at this, a little bit more comfortable. Not very comfortable with talking, which is really funny since I work mostly as a artist and have to talk to a lot of different people. I've got a lot of different skills, but anyway, enough about me. It's more about the systems I contain, and I'm not sure where to go from here. For the most part, I'd say consistency again. Honestly, this is just one of those things I'm very passionate about. Art and science are the only two things I truly love, and it's been about an entire hour now, and I don't think anybody has viewed this or anything, so I'm gonna wrap it up now. Thanks to you all who are looking at it. If you do like what I'm doing, please leave a post, a like. Again, I'm kind of new to this stuff, Subscribe if you like it, right? And leave a like. Leave me a couple of comments, and I will answer you back. And tell me something you might want to look into next time. Check out my videos, and if you've been doing this for a while, if you're somebody who knows the game, so to say, maybe I could use a couple of pointers. This is kind of gone on for about an hour, and I feel like I'm rambling to myself now. Getting more comfortable with it, but honestly, I got lots to do today, so I can't wait around to see if anybody would really want to check it out. So I am going to post it and keep it in the system of YouTube so you can check it out. Leave a comment, leave a like, subscribe if you like everything, and I am going to be trying to do at least a video a week. I'm going to hopefully do more than one video a week, but I gotta start somewhere, and I don't think many people are going to like everything on a potato phone, so I gotta figure that out too. Some small surprise, sorry, I'm a little nervous. A small surprise would be later today I'm going to try and build a tripod, so that way I can show you the night feedings in some of the tanks. This tank right here, the saltwater tank, I do like to feed it at least once a day, but it's better to kind of feed it a few times a day. This is another one of those systems that I'm having a hard time keeping the nitrates and the phosphates higher than what they should be. They should be somewhere around 0.05 to 0.05 to 0.1 for the most part, and usually they're a little non-existent. So every other day I do a heavy feeding, and everything in this tank is well balanced. If anything, it's kind of a little hard to feed. Not in the sense of it's being tedious, but you're probably, if you were to actually observe a tank in that sense, you would be amazed at how much, once the system is well balanced, can actually absorb or break down. And since everything in here kind of feeds from the water column and from the light energy, it just sucks up a lot of the stuff. And just real quick, that is a pre-filter and pump combo that set up the wave action in this tank. The controller for the wave in the back there, you can see it kind of behind my shark. Well, anyway, that's enough for today. If anybody checks this out, hope you all enjoy, and I'll catch you in the next one. Have a great day.